Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie, and I am the co-founder of Scotland Remote Workers, an organization in Scotland which aims to position Scotland as a remote workers paradise. So today, the purpose of this video is we are trying to spotlight different members of our community, the skills that they have, the things that they do, and really show the talent that Scotland has. Joining me today is Anna Rickards. Anna has been a live illustrator for the past 2 to 3 years, which I'm very excited to learn more about. She grew up in Glasgow and loved it so much that after some time living in London and Singapore, she moved back to Glasgow, where she's been based for the past few years. So welcome to the video, Anna. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, lovely to be here.
How was your day today? Okay.
It's been good. Yeah, I've been, I guess, trying to do so much all at one time, as I was telling you before, trying to increase my social media, I guess, following, and like post a lot on LinkedIn and figure out what I'm doing with my marketing presence, which has been kind of intense, but like fun as well.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Hopefully this can help you out a little bit with that. I really hope that. So can you tell me a little bit more about what live illustration actually is?
Sure. I mean, it's got a couple of names, and it's quite a recent kind of development. Like, people call it either graphic recording or live scribing, and essentially it's like you will be at a conference or a meeting. Sometimes it's like somebody's AGM where people are discussing topics, targets, that kind of thing, and you are there to capture what they are saying in a visual format. So when you say live scribing, that just means that you're doing it as it's being spoken. So as people are speaking, you're there and you're writing it as it's being done. And it's kind of a way of making more creative and interesting written notes than just the meeting notes that typically you'll just get printed out in bullet points. And this is just a way of it being a bit more exciting. You can sometimes have it shared within your team in like a PDF format, and it's just, yeah, it's a fun way of visually presenting information.
If I understand correctly, it's not like an accurate depiction of what you're looking at, right? It's not a drawing of the scene. It's a little more abstract. Is that correct?
It's kind of like a summation of the points that are being discussed. So like, for example, there'll often be meetings where people will be talking about like targets for the year, and they'll be talking about maybe achievements that they've had for the past year, and they're talking about maybe the next quarter or something. And so you're summing up in sometimes with a couple of visual, written bullet points, but mostly visuals of kind of the way in which maybe that company wants to go, or kind of like goals that they have. So not every single thing is going to be included. You're not scribing kind of every single word that's being said. It's more like a summation, or like you're sort of summing up what's being said in a fun way. It's just getting down like the key points, I guess.
So is there, just for the audience to understand as well, is there a particular project that you've worked on that you're particularly proud of that you could tell us a little bit more about and how the result turned out?
Yeah, absolutely. There was one of my favorite projects that I did was I went down to Stroud, which is in Gloucestershire, and I was working with this charity called Barnwood Trust, and they were doing this event. It was called Access to Nature, and it was to do with kind of people with disabilities and how they were being accommodated in sort of outdoorsy activities, in ways in which being in nature was inaccessible for certain people over others. And so I was there listening in on all of their they had presentations, and then they were splitting into focus groups, and then they were having discussions. And so what I was there to help them with was to kind of summarize what was being discussed in those focus groups, as well as summing up what was written in the presentations. So I was there, I had to sort of like an easel and like 4 or 5 boards, and I was just kind of like scribbling as they were going along, summing up the stuff they were doing. And then I went around with a smaller whiteboard, just listening to what people were saying in the focus groups, and then summarizing that on the board for them. And then after, I think it was the day after I'd come back, because that was like in person, I then took all of that information from all of those boards, and then I summarized that in like an additional infographic so that just putting everything out that they had spoken about, summing it all up in a smaller, more concise way. And then that was what they ended up sharing with like shareholders and stuff. So that was a really fun one. I really enjoyed that one.
That's fantastic. Honestly, the creativity that takes.
Yeah.
Like it was 5 different boards to summarize that into one compact thing that represents this massive event. It's like on the spot as well, under pressure. That's amazing.
It's quite nerve-wracking when you're there, because you worry about how it's going to look on the board. It's just pen. Like, there's no pencil. You go straight on in pen. So like, if you make a mistake, you're in trouble. So you have to be very careful about like what you're putting down. I was worrying about when it would fill up and when I would leave a space. It's kind of, you have to be very careful with your spacing and stuff, and it is just kind of all done on the fly. So it's a very specific type of skill, but it's a lot of fun.
Do people ever get a little bit off put when they see you there kind of drawing the event and everyone else is more participating, but you're more of a very obvious observer in that sense?
I think sometimes people do watch what I'm doing. I mean, sometimes you feel a bit like you're in a zoo and people are watching you like the hired entertainment in some way. And you can feel a little bit put off when you can feel people's eyes on you. But I think eventually you do kind of just blend into the background. People stop because they are primarily looking at the speaker, or hopefully they're looking at the speaker, and so they're focused on that rather than me. But sometimes you do see people kind of that are very interested in what you're doing, because I think it's just I guess it's new. If they've never seen it before, it's quite a novelty.
Yeah, I suppose it's similar to like a photographer when they first enter the room, all eyes on them.
Yeah, exactly. And you come and you've got a board, and there's a lot of equipment that you've got with you. So I think people are just genuinely quite curious about what you're doing. So a lot of people would come like halfway through, they come and they'd look at the board and see what was being drawn and stuff. And so it's quite exciting, but you do sometimes feel like you're sort of like extra, like hired, zoo animal to entertain, because it feels like you're part of the entertainment almost.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I just can't imagine how it can be done, summarizing things that are so complex. Like you think of some of these conferences where the talks are on varying topics, like so many different points, so many different speakers from so many different backgrounds. And your job is to condense all of that into one meaningful representational image. And that's just, it's amazing. I think so many people and conferences and events would love that sort of thing. I really do.
It's nice. Yeah, it's really nice because you get to learn so much, because there's all sorts of stuff that I wouldn't have learned if I hadn't been working this kind of job. You're learning about like neurodiversity and disability and all this kind of stuff. But I think some of the time they will be using these kind of acronyms that you just have no idea what they are, or they're charting success, and you're kind of like, you have to pick and choose what you think is going to be the most important, because you can't get everything down. So you have to realize like what they're going to want to have bullet pointed as the main sort of objectives, or like summarized things, when you're kind of unsure of what is the most important thing. I think that's one of the most difficult things.
Do you think that the more jobs that you take on, the more you discover yourself as an artist, your style?
I think so. Yeah, I think the more you practice, like it takes such a long time to develop your style as an artist. And I think like that's something I'm still actively doing. I'm still creating my own identity, which it kind of like flows naturally from one state to the other. I'll be thinking about what kind of illustration I want to be doing, I guess. And it's different depending on what I'm doing. Like, for example, for this type of work, I'll use a very specific type of pen on the iPad compared to if I'm doing like children's book illustration or like editorial illustration. It will be slightly different, because I think there's a simplicity to it because of the speed, because you're having to get things down quite quickly. So you're not maybe doing things in such detail as you would if you're doing it for a different type of art. But I think it's very important to have your own like brand identity as a creative, because I think otherwise you've got other people out there that can do the same thing, and you want to be standing out for the quality of your drawings. Just because it's fast doesn't mean it can't also be a very like nice looking final image at the end of the day as well.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've established some themes now which are quite common in your work? Like, how would someone identify that something is by the Anna Rickards?
The Anna Rickards. I feel like it's happened not even with me necessarily planning it, but I've done a lot of stuff about neurodiversity and kind of like mental health and disability. Like I did for Barnwood Trust, as well as doing the Stroud Day. I also made them like a 3-minute animated short, which was about access to work. And again, it was about like disability in the workplace, which was a really fun project to do. And so it means that I guess my career is kind of like moving towards the idea of like accessibility, because in itself, what I'm doing is creating more accessible visuals for people that maybe struggle to digest like these larger text formats. So I think I'm realizing that the way in which I can be useful to people is creating ways of summing up information that are good for people whose brains work differently.
Yeah. That's amazing. Really is. I'm just sitting here thinking of all the places where I can imagine this skill would be relevant, useful, who could benefit from it. It's really
Yeah.
amazing and inspiring.
Yeah, like it feels so nice when people say to me, oh, that, this really helped me. Because I think when I was a kid, I would do this to study. Like I would draw these kind of big mind maps and I would create like infographics to help me learn stuff because I just couldn't learn the way that everybody else did, like reading a book, writing bullet points. It just didn't work for me. And I think it doesn't work for a lot of people. I think it's like 1 in 3 people are visual learners. So you're bringing something to a group of people that really appreciates it, and that always feels really heartening as a creator.
Yeah, it's a nice way to understand how different people perceive the same environment as well.
Yeah, it is.
Imagine you had a group of 5 people with you at the same event, each of you coming up with very, very different versions of what it is, how you perceived it. It's very, very interesting. I think it helps you to learn more about a person. So how did you get into all this? It's quite a niche form of illustration. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into it?
Yeah, it's funny because I always wanted to do, I always wanted to draw, and I always drew for my entire life. And it was just a question of where to apply that ability. Because I think at the start I wanted to do children's book illustration. I thought that's where I feel like I stand out. And it's a very, very competitive sphere. And so I was kind of struggling a little bit. And then I followed a couple of creators on Instagram who were doing this kind of live event illustration or infographic creating, kind of like visual scribes kind of thing. And that was how I ended up joining this collective with an artist called Katie Chappell, who's absolutely amazing. And she does this full time. This is her business model, and so she creates for all sorts of companies like Google. She does it for Adobe, like all sorts of big companies. And she took on this kind of ragtag bunch of illustrators, and she was we were like a little army of illustrators that would go in and do different kind of creative jobs and stuff. And so since then, it's kind of opened my eyes to this being a type of illustration that is quite frequently, I guess, wanted or needed by various different businesses. And so it's a good way of being able to do what I want to do, which is just draw. I think a lot of when I was considering my own career, I thought, well, I don't want to do things with like computers. I really want to just use my like paper and pencil kind of thing. I want it to be just drawing. And so this was what really stood out to me as a way of doing that, the best way to do that.
It's funny when you mention computers, the first thing that comes into my head is I wonder what it would be like if you drew a day in my life.
Yeah, just computers.
Sitting at the computer, coding all day. What does that look like?
All day long, just at the computer. I think that's what put me off. Like when I tried to learn kind of like After Effects animation and stuff, it was so technical, I guess, that it just didn't work with my brain. Because I think my brain is like, oh, I just want to draw stuff with my pen. And that feels like a little bit of a lost art, because I think a lot of the ways that people are being creative, like it's still amazing, but it's kind of one step removed from just the kind of like paper and pen kind of style of creativity, which is kind of where my heart is really.
Yeah. This reminds me of the trend that's been going around lately. I see it on LinkedIn a lot. I think I might have mentioned it to you before, but people asking ChatGPT to give them a drawing of their life or how ChatGPT perceives them based on every single conversation that they've ever had.
Yeah, it's kind
I
of
did
great.
it myself, and it's really interesting. But it would be lovely to be able to just send all that information to someone and have that drawing sent back to you, essentially with a human touch to it. Make it more unique. Make it more you.
Well, I've actually heard that people are kind of now preferring the kind of almost like the more human touch of something looking a little bit hand-drawn, because it gets to a point where you can create these very corporate looking visuals, and that's fine. It kind of gets the job done, but they're lacking a certain kind of like human softness that I think people, in the age of AI, people are going to eventually start to miss. Because I think AI can, it's very proficient at doing the things that it does, but it's missing that kind of soul, that kind of like personal touch that I think is nice about an actual human artist doing those things.
Yeah, it really is. Because all those images I see, sure, they have different elements in them, but the style is always the same. So it's not really you. The items might be, but really stylistically, it's not. Some people are represented by a little bit more chaos, some by a little more structure.
Yeah.
But that's why the human touch comes in. In fact, I uploaded something on LinkedIn the other day and got accused of it being AI.
Oh,
And I was like,
oh
actually,
no.
no, this is not AI. This is not my picture, but something that I got from online, but it's a real photograph. The AI nowadays is just like,
Oh, it's crazy.
yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
mad world we're living in. Because I think, yeah, it'll get to a point where it's, and I never thought this was going to happen because I was always quite, I guess, like dismissive of what AI would be able to do. But I mean, as much as it's amazing what it's doing, it's a dangerous tool, I think, because it does stop us using the parts of our brain that I think are the most important, you know, the idea generation and the kind of creativity parts of our brain that are like, you know, I live to be creative. And if I didn't have that, I would feel like I'd really lost my purpose. So I don't want AI to do those things for me because I want to do those things. And that's what I've always wanted to do since I was a kid was to be creative and to make things and to design stuff and draw things. And that's, yeah, it's like, I think it's so important to so many creative people that it's frightening that could be taken away.
Yeah. So what's next for you then? Where do you see this all going for yourself?
I mean, I think I had a sort of a revelation, I guess, recently that I thought, well, I know what I'm good at doing and I know that people want it. So I have to think about how do I get what I'm doing to the right people? I guess my what's next is to try and I guess increase my visibility as an artist, really, is to get my work out to the right people because I always enjoy these projects so much and it's been amazing. Like I've had a great start to the year in terms of creative projects and it's frustrating when I'm looking for the right clients and it's not always the right fit, or you're trying to find the next person that wants your work. And I think so much of that is done through just like networking and luck. And so my goals for sure are just to like get myself out there, get my work out there, share about it as much as I can, and just see where it takes me because it's already been such a fun journey. So I'm looking forward to see where it goes.
I genuinely believe you've got so much opportunity here in Scotland. You've got events coming up, like the Tech for Inclusion event by This Is Milk. I think that's coming up in March. It looks amazing. But I can imagine events like that benefiting from it. You also got a very thriving startup scene here. You've got, within just Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, you've got like massive creative industries. There's always something going on that could really benefit from what you offer.
I think so, and it's just about tapping into them and finding the right person to talk to make that happen. Because it's really, I think it's very mutually beneficial in that I love to do it, and I think people really benefit from it as well. Like every time I've ever gone in and done this live, like people say, "Oh, this, you know, this has helped me so much. This has really transformed like my experience of the event." And so you're working, I guess, hand in hand, like in companionship with with companies or organizations to create work that is really helpful and doing good as well. I think that's important to me as well.
Yeah. Do you ever teach or give workshops on what you've learned?
I'd like to. I think I've taught creative workshops before. I've actually did some creative workshops at Cass Art before, but specifically in live illustration I haven't done, which I'd quite like to get into because I think it's a very useful skill and it's one that people don't even think of. When they think of illustration, it's a relatively new field and quite niche. So I think for people that have skills in illustration that want to try out, it would be great to try out some classes and just see if people would be interested.
Well, maybe this is a Scotland Remote Workers exclusive.
Yeah,
Anna Rickards,
exactly.
Career.
Never
You heard
know.
it here first.
Yeah, that'd be
That's
great.
amazing. So you're currently you're based in Glasgow, but you don't really have to be, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do, you're just sending emails, and you could do it from wherever you are, and it's what I always found very attractive about, you know, as much as freelance work can be difficult in that it's kind of stop and starty or it's feast or famine. What I always liked about it was that I can just do it in my pajamas in my house, you know, also on my own time, because I think everyone's different and I never really sort of vibed with the 9 to 5 hours either. Like it never really worked for me, and I know it probably doesn't work for most people because it's very prescriptive. Whereas if I'm doing a project and I can just do it completely on my own time, it really suits me better the way that I work. So I think in that sense, like being remote and you're not, you don't have to be in an office, you don't have to engage in the typical office culture. You just basically you're given a brief, you complete the brief, you send the brief, and that's very simple. You know, I always know exactly what's asked of me, and I think that working style, it really does fit with my own kind of preferences, and I really enjoy them.
You touch on a really good point there, because I think what remote work and hybrid models to some extent are offering now is the ability to take control of your time. Everyone has their own different natural rhythm, cycles when they can be very productive, cycles when they are a little more tired or less energetic. And the fact is, when you do something like what you do, you can incorporate work into your life instead of treating life and work as two very separate entities. They just become one. And it's a very calm and peaceful way of living, which probably leads to you being a lot more creative and productive as well.
Yeah, I think if you trust your employees to be able to deliver their deliverables whenever and however they please, I think it makes such a massive difference. You know, I've been in workplaces where they've kind of had me on a very short leash. You know, 9 to 5, you do this, you do that. You got someone breathing down your neck, basically. And I think that never really worked for me, because I think I feel confident in being able to do what I can do, and so I don't particularly want people to be kind of like micromanaging me, I guess. And I want to be able to like go to the doctor if I want to go to the doctor, or go get some shopping if I want to get some shopping. It's like, I think the way that 9 to 5s work, they're incredibly stifling, and it never really, I don't think it fits most people to work that way. And especially if you've got, you know, for example, you've got kids, or you've got like other caring responsibilities. There's so many ways in which a 9 to 5 is incredibly limiting for people. And if you just allow people to work during the hours that they wish to work, and do it all remotely, so that they have a lot of more flexibility, it doesn't even impact the performance either. Like productivity doesn't go down. I think if anything, it goes up, because you have the freedom to arrange your schedule the way you want to.
Yeah, I completely agree with every single word you just said. Honestly, you really hit the nail on the head there. So why do you choose Glasgow to base yourself out of? I know you're from Glasgow originally, you moved back after the pandemic. Why Glasgow?
I think it's such an amazing city for so many reasons. And like, obviously I'm biased because I'm from here and I grew up here, and my family is here, so that's obviously like a reason to anchor me here. But I think even objectively, it's such a friendly city. Like there's no other city that I've ever been to that's had this kind of like community feeling. Like even since joining, like for example, just joining Shut Up and Write, the meetup group, I feel like I have such a solid network of people here that I can lean on. And I guess between like Glasgow and Edinburgh, like I guess the Scottish art scene is really, really lovely. I spent a short time working in London. I just find it incredibly, I don't know, just like lonely and difficult and very isolating. Whereas I think in Scotland, like you just feel like people are there for you in a kind of emotional way that in other cities it just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, I agree. There's a massive community here in Glasgow of creatives that are working independently. Are there any specific places you go? Like I know a lot of the time you're probably working in isolation on your own to enhance your creativity, productivity, but do you ever miss that sense of working with people around you? Is there anywhere that you go that you like to work from?
I do sometimes miss it. I think there is a social element that is sometimes lacking when you're freelance, and you do feel a little bit like disconnected from others. Like I'll go to like the Mitchell Library. I like to go like meet with people that I've met through various like creative groups. Like there's an animation group that I often meet with called Clanimation, and that's just like a meetup of a bunch of different animators, like creative people. And they meet in like I think it's Glasgow and Edinburgh, and I think they're doing one in Dundee as well. And those have been amazing, like just for connecting with other people that do the same kind of work that you do. Because a lot of the time all my friends will have 9 to 5s, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like your life is so weird." And I'm like, "It's not really. Like you just have to connect with people that also understand the style of work that you do, which is, you know, so it's like all project based. It's kind of like all over the place, and you're doing kind of all sorts of different things at the same time. But it's nice to connect with other people that understand that and are doing the same thing. And like groups like Clanimation have been really, really good for that.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got space to be on your own, but you've also got opportunity to be around other people who understand you pretty much whenever you want. It sounds exactly. That's amazing. Yeah. And now like in Glasgow alone, you've got places popping up, like Social Hub started last year. You've got Buyers Community Hub in the West End, which I recently tried out, and that was really
nice.
Have you been there?
I haven't, no.
It's pretty good. It's part of Glasgow University.
Okay,
it's a free
nice.
working area that you can go to. A lot of students there, but then you get some professionals just go there to work, just to have some company around them.
Oh, yeah. Nice. There's Code Base in Stirling is also quite good, I think.
I've heard about them as well. We've got quite a few of these places popping up all around now. So yeah, Scotland's just getting better and better and better, really, for co-working spaces as well.
Definitely.
Like these bubbles of creatives and techies, and yeah, it's amazing.
I think it's nice to put the two together, because I think a lot of the time, if you're a creative in a bunch of creatives, you are kind of, it's nice to find fellow artists, but at the same time, you are each other's competition. You're not going to network with each other because you're all offering the same services. Whereas if you're maybe combining the tech and the creatives, more often that could be a collaboration that would work more in terms of like what services one had to offer for the other.
I'm curious as well. Obviously, Glasgow, you've got an amazing city life balance with, a lot of cool creative vibes. But obviously near Glasgow, we have great access to amazing nature. We've got Glencoe, we've got the Cairngorms not too far away. There's some really beautiful areas up in the Highlands. Do you ever make the most of that? Do you feel like it helps you to be even more creative now and again?
I absolutely love doing kind of outdoorsy stuff like climbing, going up, I think I went with often I'll go with my dad, and we'll go like up to, I climbed Schiehallion, which was a huge, it was like 3,000 feet, not a mountain, but like large, Munro, I think, which was in, I think, Perthshire.
Munro.
Yes, a Munro. I think that's like bigger than a hill, but smaller than a mountain is a Munro. But no, like I think that's another reason why I love being in Scotland, and why when I was away from it, I missed it so much, was that the natural beauty of Scotland and the ease with which you can like go into the Highlands, and you can go into, like Glencoe, you can go up to the Outer Hebrides. It's just like what I love most about being in Scotland is the quality of life and the work-life balance, because you have the time. You're not spending every penny that you earn on like your house to just stay there, which you would if you were in London, and you'd be so far away from anything kind of natural other than parks. But in Scotland, like, it's so easy to wild swim in the sea, or climb a mountain, or go to Skye, and it's just like, it's amazing. I think it's like the best kept secret is living in Scotland.
Yeah, it's always underestimated. I don't think people realize how much adventure there is to be had here. You've got scuba diving and shipwrecks near the Orkney. You've got surfing championships up north, I believe, as well. Skiing up in Glencoe and Glenshee.
Yeah, bit of everything.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, the Munros as well. There's so many of them.
The Munros, what they call it, bag of Munro. But you just, all my old school friends post photos of themselves bagging a Munro every weekend.
So I've got one last question for you, Anna, before we finish. And that is, I'm always interested to hear if you've received a piece of advice or ever had an interaction that really resonated with you and kind of guided you on the path that you're on now.
100%. I was thinking about this because there definitely is one. I was in London working at a job, and it was difficult. It just wasn't quite the right fit for me in the end. And I worked really hard at it. But at the end of the day, one of my colleagues at that job, they were all absolutely lovely. One of them said to me, something that really stuck with me in my mind, and it really helped me kind of moving forward. She was like, you wouldn't expect a fish to fly or a bird to swim underwater. Like, just be you, just do you. And it really just changed my whole outlook, because I was like, oh, I can just do what I'm good at. Like, it doesn't matter that you weren't a good fit for this role. Just do what's right for you. And that really like put me onto the path that I'm on now. I think arguably it's because I'm thinking about what I'm good at and what I want to do. I think for a long time I was just doing what I thought I had to do, and now I'm doing what I want to do, and it's just a whole mindset change.
That's amazing. I really agree with that. I think it takes that kick. We all know we want to do something. We don't know exactly what, but you can realize when something isn't quite right for you. But it's always hard to accept that and realize that actually you can and probably should take the leap and follow what you want if you want to live a life that's more truly yours, instead of living out someone else's dreams.
Yeah,
someone else's
100%.
With your life.
It just switched my whole mindset around, and it made me feel so much better. I've had so much kind of insecurity, or I felt like such a failure, and then I just turned it around and thought, well, what do you want? That matters. What do you want out of your own life? You don't just have to do what you think you have to do. Exactly what you want to do, and that helps me so much.
You're very brave. I'll give you that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Hope everything's worked out.
Yeah,
sounds like it has.
So far so good. So far so good. Yeah.
Amazing. So how can people reach out to you, Anna, if they want to get in touch?
So I would say my Instagram is Anna Rickards Art, and then my website is the same. I think it's www.annarickards.art.
Brilliant. And you have your illustrations on there that people can take a look at as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm posting stuff all the time now. I'm being at my most annoying, so I'm posting stuff like every day. There'll be new stuff. I've got actually a bunch of stuff I'm excited to share at the end of the month, as soon as I'm allowed. So that's going to be probably about end of Feb. So there'll be lots of new stuff to see on there.
Oh, amazing. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Awesome. I hope we can get you to draw one of our Scotland Remote Workers events in the future.
Please. Yeah, 100%. Yes. Absolutely.
Amazing.